So you ever stumbled across something online that's just so out there you can't look away? Well, that's what we're diving into today. It's called the Unified Framework for Structured Multiversal Interactions, and it comes from this mysterious group Bibebibebibe. At first glance, it looks like a super dense scientific paper trying to be a theory of everything. But as you're about to see, its real purpose is something way more creative, and frankly, a lot stranger. To get a handle on what this whole thing is really about, we've got to start at the beginning, with its own, let's call it, origin story. And believe me, it kicks off weird and just keeps going from there. Okay, so this is literally the first sentence of the whole document. Right off the bat, you know we're not exactly in a physics class. It's talking about slip flow and counterflow like they're fundamental forces of nature, but never explains what they are. This tells us immediately we're not dealing with science, we're dealing with lore.
So that brings us to the big question. What is this thing really? Is it a genuine attempt at some kind of new science? Is it an incredibly elaborate art project? Or maybe it's the rulebook for a story that hasn't even been told yet? Well, to figure it out, we've got to break it down piece by piece, starting with its most basic building blocks.
According to the framework, its entire universe is built from just 5 fundamental parts. It calls them the core objects. And if we want to understand the whole system, we first have to meet the key players.
And here they are, C, B, M, P, and Q. Consciousness, biological agents, mythic constructs, physical substrates, and quantum gate systems. It's a wild mix, isn't it? You've got these really heady, abstract ideas like myth sitting right next to hard sci-fi concepts. And that combination, it's totally on purpose. Let's just quickly break down what each one is.
Okay, first up, C is for consciousness states. And think about this. By putting it at the top of the list, the framework is basically saying that everything else, the physical world, our stories, all of it, is built on the foundation of subjective experience. Next is B for biological agents. This one's a bit more straightforward. It's us. It's any living being that acts and participates within this constructed reality. And now we hit M for mythic constructs. This is where it gets really interesting. The framework treats stories, legends, even our belief systems as if they're actual physical building blocks of reality on the same level of atoms or energy. That's a pretty radical idea. Now, to bring us all back down to Earth a little bit, we have P for physical substrates. This is the stuff you can actually touch. You know, planets, stars, and all the physical matter that makes up our tangible universe. And finally, Q stands for quantum gate systems. I mean, this is straight out of a sci-fi novel. It treats super advanced technology not just as a tool that we use, but as a fundamental component of the universe itself. So to recap, the 5 building blocks are mind, body, story, matter, and technology. What a list, huh? So, okay, we've got our 5 core things. You can think of them as the nouns of this universe. But they don't just sit there doing nothing, right? The next layer of this whole thing is all about the connections, the verbs that describe how these objects actually interact with one another. They call these connections morphisms. Now, that's a fancy term from math, but here you can just think of them as the forces or actions that link everything together. And just look at the names: resonance, identity, sovereignty. Again, these aren't physical laws, they're deep philosophical ideas. So check out this table. They call it the functorial structure, but really it's just a map of all these connections. If you look closely at that mapping column, you'll see something really interesting. See how C for consciousness is kind of the central hub? It connects to myth, biology connects to it, physics connects to it. In this system, it really feels like conscious experience is at the absolute center of everything. So yeah, here's the simplest way to get your head around it. If those 5 core objects we talked about are the nouns of this universe, then these morphisms are the verbs. They're the action words that tell the story. They describe how a biological agent might achieve consciousness, or how a myth can actually influence the physical world. They are what makes a narrative even possible inside this system. Okay, so we've got our building blocks and the rules for how they connect. But this is where it gets even more ambitious. According to the framework, all of it, every single piece, is designed to fit into one single unifying formula, the so-called blueprint of everything. And there it is, the unified functional. Now look, we're not about to try and solve this thing. The variables aren't even defined. Its real purpose here is purely symbolic. It's meant to look like some terrifyingly complex equation from a physics textbook. It's all about giving the whole project this air of scientific legitimacy. Which, of course, leads us to the biggest question of all. Why? Why go through all this trouble? Why create this incredibly dense system of objects and actions and fake math? Well, it turns out the answer was right there from the beginning, hiding in plain sight in the project's own disclaimer. And here it is, the big reveal. The creators say it flat out, this is not a scientific theory. They call it, and I quote, mythic infrastructure, so a system for building new myths. A cinematic indictment, which sounds like a social critique told through film. And a sovereign broadcast, a message sent completely outside of the usual channels. And this is the last piece of the puzzle. This whole framework is just one part of a much larger art project called Echo Rift. And its stated goal? To use this incredibly complex sci-fi language to expose what it calls containment, convergence, and erosion in our real-world systems. So at the end of the day, it's a tool for art and social critique, just cleverly disguised in the language of theoretical physics. So where does that leave us with this thing? It uses the language of science, but its purpose is art and critique. It's way too structured to be just a simple story, but it's obviously not a real scientific theory. You know, maybe the best way to think about it is as a new kind of myth-making for our time, a complex engine built for creating stories, in an age that's just swimming in data and complex systems. What do you think it is?